Excellent. Okay, so here's why a universal basic income would and should make the earned income tax credit obsolete, but it's not for the reasons that you would think. And so if you're wondering why the hell this blue hair weirdo here is qualified to discuss tax policy, just a quick little 5-second movie version of my background. Okay, so just something I want to get out of the way really quickly is that I'm a graduate of Hunter College. I've never been up to this side of campus, but they kept trying to get me to come back to go talk to all the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, kids in the accounting graduate program about the opportunities they have with a degree from their school, and I was just all, no. So I'm back as a socialist insurgent saying, don't waste your life on accounting degrees that you don't want, like I did. Basic income, fight the power. So I practice, I'm actually an IRS licensed enrolled agent, which is a tax professional who has representation powers across all 50 states. CPAs are limited to the states that I'm only licensed to practice in. I actually worked with the IRS for 3 years running setting competency standards for enrolled agents. And I practiced for 10 years, about most of those 10 years were actually spent up in my home borough of the Bronx, so I'm very familiar with EITC claims and some of the pitfalls as we're gonna get into. And then I spent my final years in the business doing taxes for the 1%, which, well, that's why I'm a socialist. That was the experience, just finally did it. And I'm also, well, at least I'm happy now in the games industry and fighting for basic income. So without further ado, what is the earned income tax credit? So if you're unfamiliar with it, if you ever claimed it before, it's a federal tax credit that's designed for low and moderate income families, individuals, primarily meant to offset, the payroll taxes that you have to pay. That was its chief design. And so some quick facts about the earned income tax credit, which you can easily find on irs.gov. There's over 27 million working families. This includes individual households, who received over $67 billion worth of EITC for the 2016 tax year. The average amount that you will receive for EITC is $2,455, which, think about it, over a year, that's really not that much. Most households who have qualifying children, if you earn up to $53,500 a year, you'll be eligible. If you don't have any qualifying children, you must earn less than $14,500 per year. And so 26 states and Washington, D.C. also have their own matching EITC programs. Some even have it on the city level, such as New York City. I once got an illustrious $3 to the city, thanks Bloomberg. It employs and most of these programs employ the matching principle, which means that you must qualify for EITC on the federal level, or else you're not going to get it on the state level at all. So the big question, well, why should a universal basic income replace EITC? And so because I want to leave as much time as possible for Q&A, we got a late start. I'm gonna maybe breeze these a bit, but I'm just gonna make this very much the point. The first one being the IRS is the wrong agency to administer a program like this. I'm just gonna say it as someone who practiced tax law for about 10 years. It's because tax administration is very onerous. And I'm just gonna also come out and say it, Congress has been kneecapping the IRS for years. And when you have a Republican majority, they go to town on it. We're already losing tax processing centers around the country. One of the biggest ones in the nation just closed this past year. When you don't have enough tax professionals, or you're that badly understaffed, well, who do you think they're gonna go after? The people who can't afford to get representation. VITA clinics, that's volunteer income tax assistance, they're always booked up. You can't get help for this. But the main thing is this, that it's just the wrong agency to do this, because revenue officers are not trained as social workers. They don't know, what a family or individual's needs are like. They're not trained in that. And then because a tax return also must be filed in order to get, EITC, there are millions of individuals who would be eligible for it, but they can't get it because they have a situation where they either don't have to file a tax return, or you're working off the books and you don't know how that's going to affect you. We can get more into that later. And And then, yeah, so this one too, it also places a pretty undue burden on certain blocks of tax professionals, depending on where they set up shop or like where they're serving. There are lengthy questionnaires required by law, that you have to know whenever you're dealing with an EITC recipient. Like, you have to do this. Like, it's an administrative cost. Who they pass that on to? A client who's already pretty damn cash-strapped. State policies and procedures for their own EITC programs can also add to this burden. And then tax pros can also face severe penalties, even including disbarment, if the IRS thinks that like you are pretty much willfully committing malfeasance with EITC returns, because it does happen. It's a lot of money at stake. People, they'll pay up because they just want to get the money, and then I've seen what happens. It's not pretty. Whoops, I think I skipped something. Okay. Another big one is that EITC also really serves to prop up a very unscrupulous, very predatory industry known as the refund anticipation loan business. Like, you may have seen the signs, fast cash now, get your refund early. It's a loan. It's not like a special process you can file for the IRS. That is a loan. And the average cost to originate an RAL is about $25 to $60. But RALs actually average around 425% APR. That's not a typo. That's actually 425%. And because it's secured by the refund, it's actually somehow managed to bypass usury laws. And yeah, there are tons of like unscrupulous preparers, known in the profession as ghost preparers, who will open up these shops. They stick around for one tax season, charge out the ass for these loans, because they know that when somebody is behind on their rent for 2 months, you got hungry kids to feed, you may have medical bills that are piling up, they know that they can take advantage of people. They know that there is a demand for the product. It's a necessary evil, just like payday loans. It's god awful, and this is why we need to like replace this with a basic income, so people are not in those situations in the first place. Another big reason is that, as you can probably surmise by now, the EITC eligibility guidelines are intentionally confusing and even punitive. For instance, like when you're trying, because there's actually currently 4 different categories for EITC. There's no qualifying children, then 1, 2, and 3 qualifying children. Those are the 4 classes of EITC that we currently have. And an eligible child for EITC purposes uses completely different rules than who is, like what kind of child is eligible to be your dependent. There's no like specific match of, okay, if this child's my dependent, they automatically qualify for EITC. That's not how it works. And so a lot of people, they don't intend to like, defraud the IRS or anything like that, but they just make a mistake in figuring, oh, this is my dependent, I can get the credit. And however, if the IRS, does happen to audit you, if they think that you willfully, like claim EITC wrongly, you can be barred from taking it for up to 10 years. And there is no other tax benefit that uniquely punishes you like this. This is like the biggest one that I've seen in my experience, is that just the simple fact that waiting people until tax time to get cash assistance further perpetuates poverty. Because if you need cash, right this second, how the hell is waiting until you file a tax return going to help you? And if we go back to the beginning with what the average EITC payout even is, it's whatever. Hey, like $2,400 is better than nothing, but that's really not going to help you. Yeah, if you're behind on the rent, if you need those last couple of dollars just to help you go to school, you've got other living expenses piling up, and so now this last bullet point that I mentioned here is an interesting one, because like Andy Stern mentioned on the first day of the conference, we're not living in our grandparents' economy anymore. And so one of the rules for qualifying for EITC is that, well, it's supposed to just provide incentive for going to work. That's what the supposed purpose is. There's also various limits on it, one of them being that investment income must be less than $3,400 a year or you get no credit at all. Some of you may be thinking, oh, well, if you're poor, you're not gonna have investments, what's the big deal? Did you know that Airbnb, renting out your home, renting out your property counts as investment income? It does. If you're renting out an extra room because you're trying to pay your bills, because once again, why wait till tax time if you need help? It's easy to go over $3,400 a year if you had to be living in like a prime area like what Harlem is even turning into. And you'll get totally screwed from qualifying for that credit. And now, this is also, I think, the most pernicious of all, is that EITC largely favors people who are on the books. When I was getting into before about when you have someone who's like working off the books because it's either hey, work off the books or starve, and you don't really have a lot of options. There's a lot of benefits you get royally screwed out of, and once again, the IRS, especially a totally kneecapped IRS, does not spend their resources going after the employers that are doing this. And so pretty much this means that not all working people are going to be covered. And if you have a W-2 and opposed to say self-employment, which I think actually no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get into that later. I wanna get into these other categories, namely, if you have no qualifying children, you must be at least 25 years old. So if you're a student, and you're working, you may not have your parents supporting you. They figure you still have a parent in your life by 24, so they say, well, screw you, you don't get EITC. You also, if you don't have qualifying children, you're still working. And because we have a lot more seniors who are still working because they have to now. They don't get EITC because they assume you're on Social Security, you don't need it. If you're an adult without kids, you get almost nothing in EITC. The max benefit is around $500. If you're married filing separate, you cannot get the credit at all. Because a lot of people will, they'll sit down with tax software or the tax professional, or try to figure out, is it more beneficial to file jointly or file separately? And so IRS knew this, they know people do that, so they say, oh, well, screw you. If you're gonna be married filing separate, you don't get the credit. And this can also totally kneecap you if you're, say, going through a divorce and you have to take the status. And caregivers is another one. Elderly parents are not considered eligible dependents for EITC purposes, only qualifying children. And so what is the efficacy of the earned income tax credit? How is this program currently helping people? How is this measured? So because we had limited time for this presentation, I couldn't pull up various representations of this or the way people would interpret the efficacy of the EITC. So I decided just to look at what the IRS had to say about it. And so the IRS claims that 9.4 million people, 5 million of which are children, have been lifted out of poverty because of the EITC, and that they just simply said 22 million are less poor. I don't know, judging by all those fast refund now signs I keep seeing, I'm having a hard time believing that. So does it really truly, address reducing poverty? So now here's why I believe, after 10 years of practicing tax law, and I did taxes for literally everyone from welfare recipients to multi-billionaires, and this is just my perspective on why a UBI would be superior to the earned income tax credit for truly lifting people out of poverty. The first one being that the administrative costs of a UBI are going to be minuscule. While the EITC processing itself is actually not that expensive, any audits related to it certainly are. Administering programs for tax professionals, those questionnaires I mentioned, that costs money. Tax professionals have actually proposed making, Health and Human Services or Social Security pick up the slack, to relieve that incompatibility with the IRS administering a social program. I say screw all that, just give us a basic income. People need cash to live. And simply put, a UBI need more money. Going by, some of the figures that have been tossed around in the UBI sphere a lot, assuming that once you turn 18, you get, say, $1,000 a month, and then, the parent of an eligible child gets $600 a month. It's just plain and simple more money. These are the maximum, EITC that you can get depending on what category you fall into. So you can get a little over $6,000, for the entire year if you have 3 or more eligible children. $506 if you have none. So like the maximum there, that's like a little over $300 a month. About not even $41 a month, no kids. That's definitely nowhere near what a basic income would provide. And then this one's just pretty self-explanatory. Tax professionals don't have to take on the role of being social workers, either do IRS employees. But this is the most, I think, important one of all. It is received for all work. Caregiving. How the hell do we live in a country where daycare costs more than college, a nursing home costs more than a luxury condo, but yet caregiving is not considered work? Volunteering. Nonprofits don't just need you to write a check, they need volunteers. Why shouldn't that get rewarded? Working your ass off in school. That's definitely something worth rewarding. If you're working off the books, you should not get punished for it. Entrepreneurship. Okay, that's now you're talking my language. Well, you can get EITC if you're self-employed, but let's say you're an Uber driver, you're treated exactly the same as a well-off entrepreneur like me for tax purposes. You make like $10,000, you lease a car, you have a lot of expenses, you have only maybe like $1,000 in net income. You're not going to get all the EITC that you would seriously should be entitled to, because that's just the way that the tables work out. If you rack up a loss, you don't have to pay self-employment tax, but then you also don't get any EITC for it either. Most of all, no one would be left behind with a universal basic income. Childless adults can get the help they deserve. I know some people might have questions about Rokana's proposal, and I think that it would do a great job of addressing this disparity, but that's still not a basic income. It's still conditional on work and subject to all the constraints I just discussed. But most of all, UBI additions, for dependent children would be more efficient to help parents in need than this current program. Your marital status will also never come into question because, getting married, getting divorced can really screw up a person's tax situation. I know, I was a tax pro for 10 years and I don't miss having to be a de facto marriage counselor. And most of all too, caregivers and elderly parents are also not left behind. They're not even included for the EITC calculations. So yeah, that's just the main thing. EITC, I feel the same way like I do about the ACA, don't dump it if there's nothing left to actually replace it with. But leave EITC alone until we have a universal basic income, mainly because it's going to stop perpetuating the cycle of poverty. And and if RIL business dies in a fire, all the better. Yeah, because everyone will truly have a chance to get ahead no matter how old you are, how much you're earning, how you're earning it, your marital status, household composition. It's the great equalizer.
Thank you.